This is the ultimate face-off between two of BMW's absolute powerhouses, the thrilling turbocharged 335i and the roaring V8 M3. So let's go ahead and dive straight into the action and reveal which model is superior and why. The BMW 335i was launched in 2006 and debuted with the N54 engine. And for those of you who don't know, the N54 engine was a twin turbocharged 3.0 inline-six engine that was good for about 300 horsepower and 300 foot-pounds of torque, which would move the 335i from 0 to 60 in 5.1 seconds depending on which transmission you opted for. So the two transmission choices were the 6-speed manual transmission, and then you had the ZF automatic transmission. So now in the 328, 330i models, you had the GM transmission, which was also available. For the 335i, this was strictly only going to be the ZF transmission. And this made a huge difference because the ZF is a German-made transmission and was proven to shift a lot quicker and just give the car a sporty feel. So having that ZF 6-speed transmission paired with the twin turbocharged N54 engine was a great setup because it made the 335i really put power down extremely well and feel a lot more sport oriented. But power wise, this engine could be tuned and upgraded so extremely easily, and we've highlighted it in another video that the N54 engine was so easy to turn into a beast with intake, downpipes, tune, upgraded intercooler, and a few other mods here and there. You could bring this engine up to 500 horsepower easily, making it an amazing option for anybody who really wanted to take their car to a track, or an enthusiast who really wanted to squeeze every little drop of horsepower and torque from their engine setup. And the ZF transmission really future-proofed this engine because it allowed for a thrilling experience even years down the line. Now, the one thing the N54 did not do so great at that we've highlighted in a couple other videos is reliability. You had people reporting that the fuel injectors were faulty after just years of ownership. It wasn't until the Index 12 injectors that all across the board people saw upgraded reliability. As well, the high pressure fuel pump was infamous for going out. Having two turbochargers also created a ton of heat in the engine bay, which expedited oil leaks and coolant leaks and things of that nature. So reliability wise, it started to really be a hassle to own one of these if you didn't have money sitting off to the side. And nowadays, with this car being a couple decades old almost, you're going to be buying this car used. And if you're not buying it used from a dealership, you're probably buying it off Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, you're probably buying it from cars.com, some website like that, where you don't necessarily always know the car's been taken care of. So buying these cars secondhand and used can start to be risky if you don't know what to look out for. And so later down the line, BMW actually switched out the N54 engine for the N55. The N55 was a single turbocharged 3.0 inline-six engine. So that single turbocharger in the N55 was actually twin scrolling, and it was able to create its boost more efficiently than the twin turbo setup of the N54. Now this makes a massive difference when it comes down to what you want out of your BMW. If you want to chase the most power as possible, the N54 pre-facelift is what you want. But if you want reliability and power thrown into the mix, then you want to get the N55. And so what BMW did with the facelift was basically modernize the car. So the front end looks different, it looks more modern, you have more LED lighting all around the vehicle, but it looks a tad bit less aggressive. If you compare the pre-facelift and the facelift model E92 Coupe, for example, you can see that the facelifted model looks a bit more modern with the LED lighting up front, and the headlights look different. But the pre-facelift, it looks angular, it looks sharper. All in all, it just looks like a more aggressive vehicle. And that's actually why BMW used that pre-facelift setup, that same design, in the M3 models. And so now, depending what you want out of your vehicle, either of these options is great for you. The N54 has a greater power potential, so you can really reach higher horsepower numbers than the N55, but you have to keep in mind reliability is not going to be as good as it will be in the N55. So the N55 is an overall greater purchase if you're paying out of your own pocket and you want to keep cost of ownership a bit lower. And so now you can start to see, when you compare the 335i to the M3, which we're about to discuss here in a minute, it's not as simple, because the 335i had two different engine setups to pick from, and depending what year you opted for in that 335i model range, you're going to get different features, a different aesthetic, you're going to get a different look, you're going to get a different interior. They do little tweaks here and there. It's just a different vehicle all in all. And so now the good thing about the 335i is, regardless if you want the facelifted or non-facelifted model, you can buy these cars for an extremely affordable price. If you go anywhere you can buy cars, I'm going to use Facebook Marketplace as an example because it's relatable. It's a relatable website. You can purchase these vehicles anywhere from $5,000 all the way up to $15K, depending how well they've been maintained, taken care of, modified, etc. But you can buy yourself a 335i with the N54 engine, throw about $2,000 worth of modifications in there, and you're already pushing upwards of 450, 500 horsepower. And that is an absolute amazing bang for your buck, because if you're telling me you can get a 500 horsepower twin turbocharged BMW for $7,000-8,000 all in total, that is an absolute steal and an amazing bang for your buck. And the 335i really cannot be outcompeted when it comes to price. If you're talking your own money, your own hard-earned money that you go clock in, clock out, you're spending your own money on a vehicle, the 335i is really hard to beat. So now that moves us in to the notorious roaring V8 M3. And so the E9X M3 debuted in 2007 and was powered by the S65 engine, which is a 4.0 naturally aspirated V8 engine. Yes, you heard me right, a German V8. So this engine was good for 414 horsepower and 295 foot-pounds of torque. And this V8 engine is an absolute blast to drive. The 414 horsepower might not sound absolutely insane and awe-inspiring, but it feels magnificent. The V8 engine inside of the E92 M3 is assisted by a 6-speed manual transmission or the dual clutch transmission. The dual clutch transmission is basically the SMG transmission, except done right. It's a hybrid of a manual and an automatic. And so what the DCT transmission does for the E9X M3 is it allows it to put its power down all in one smooth, consistent, linear output. And the reason for that is, when you have an automatic transmission and you're accelerating and then the car shifts, you have a minor gap in the rev band where the car is not able to put its horsepower down to the wheels. A manual transmission mitigates that because you yourself are engaging the gears, and if you get good at driving a manual, you can be very, very precise and have nearly no gaps in your rev band. The DCT transmission takes this a step further. It uses two interlocking clutches that are able to shift into the next gear, and basically what this does is it cuts down the shift times, so when you drive this M3, it feels like it's one strong, consistent pull from 0 to 100 miles an hour. And as if it isn't crazy enough that BMW put a V8 engine in an M car, this V8 revs up past 8,000 RPMs, which gives you a screaming experience. It's a high revving V8 that sounds and feels like no other. You cannot compare this engine to the likes of a Mustang or a Camaro. The S65 V8, if you ever hear one, sounds exotic. It sounds foreign. It sounds different. When you hear an S65 engine screaming and you hear the high revving 6,000, 7,000, now 8,000 RPMs, it shifts, the exhaust pops and crackles, and you see the M3 ripping through curved roads and tossing and turning and pulling, and you see that in person, it is a different experience. It's high revving. You can make the exhaust scream. It is just a whole feeling. And that gets us into the next point, is although the drivetrain is the centerpiece of the E9X M3, it feels like the rest of the vehicle is sculpted around that engine. The suspension feels fully tuned and dialed in, especially when the vehicle is in M mode. It really feels like whatever the driver inputs, the vehicle outputs. It's just such a predictable driving experience. And predictable is extremely good if you want a fast, spirited, track-like, aggressive drive in your day-to-day. The E9X M3 gets it done. And there's so many fine details about this M3 that just make it stand out in every way. From the large bulge in the hood, to the fangs that stick out of the front bumper, to the slits and slats that come out of the fenders and the M Sport style side skirts, to the quad exhaust tips, to the wide arching fender flares. Like, everything about this car screams performance, stance, low to the ground, and I can eat whatever you throw at me. And now there's two words that you can describe the E9X M3 with, and that is controlled chaos. Everything about this car is sophisticated and controlled. It is linear. Whatever inputs go in are the outputs that you receive. But at the same time, when you flip that M button, when you toss this thing through a winding road, when you really lay into the accelerator pedal, when you bring that engine up to 7,000, 7,500, 8,000 RPMs, and you make that exhaust scream, it is absolute chaos that is controlled by the driver. The car goes exactly where you want it to go. Something about the driving experience is just unparalleled. And now, one of my favorite things about BMW M3s, and specifically the E9X M3s, is you're owning a bit of lineage in the car company itself. The top thing I love about the M lineup is no matter how old your M is, no matter how stock it is, everyone can appreciate it. And the thing about a 335i and all of these other different models and cars, etc., it always comes down to, hey, my car's faster, I can gap your car, want to race? Owning an M is not that. It is sophistication. It is that controlled chaos experience. It's in the fine details. It's having the M stitched into your driver's seat. It's the attention to detail, the dialed in suspension, having the little M badge on your rims and all throughout the car. It's just an overall all-encompassing experience. Driving an M is something that you just can't compare driving a lot of cars to. It just screams something different that, wow, that is a proper sports coupe. And so now reliability with the S65 engine really is not as bad as a lot of people chop it up to seem. For the most part, you have two issues that need immediate addressing if you buy an E9X M3. Number one is the rod bearings. If you do not replace the rod bearings on your M3, I would say anything over 100,000 miles, you really run the risk of blowing up your engine. Yes, it is that severe. And in all honesty, you can replace your rod bearings on your own if you just have a lift, you drop the subframe, you drop the oil pan, you can do it yourself. And they make upgrade kits that are actually proven to last longer than the OEM ones. And all that to say, the rod bearings are an extremely vital part of the engine and really one of the only weak points within this V8. And number two on that list is you're going to need to replace the throttle actuators at some point. There are two throttle actuators in total. When the throttle actuators are going bad, one of the most typical symptoms you can expect to have is reduced power. Or if you have the DCS, the dynamic stability control light on, or things of that nature, usually that'll link back to the throttle body actuators. And now you can buy a set of these, like OEM set, for about $2,000, and then you can replace them on your own. It's really not a crazy process. There's actually a ton of DIY videos out there on it. But replacing those throttle actuators isn't something you need to do right off the bat, but it's something you can expect to do within your lifetime of owning the car. But outside of those two issues, most of the other things are hit and miss and minor issues that you're going to have with the V8 engine. So valve covers, things of that nature. Overall, the S65 V8 is actually a very reliable engine. You could almost say it's more reliable than the 335i. And yes, that might sound crazy. How is the car that's double the price and it's a V8 more reliable? Well, easy, because it's a naturally aspirated, well-balanced, thought out V8 with a dual clutch transmission. And if you replace the dual clutch transmission fluid on time when you're supposed to at the regular intervals, even that can be reliable. So make sure if you own one of these, rod bearings right off the bat, have money in your back pocket for the throttle body actuators, and then replace your dual clutch transmission fluid on time. And like I said, for the most part, these can actually be extremely reliable engines, so you have the potential to daily drive a screaming V8, and it's in an M3, and debatably the best M3 that ever released in a lot of people's opinion. And so I know this is a ton of information to take in, and it can be overwhelming, like, wow, this is a lot. Which vehicle is better? Should I get a 335i or should I get the M3? So now I can finally reveal to you which one of these vehicles is superior, which one is the better model, and that is going to be the M3. But I want you to listen to this, all right? Keep listening. The M3 is superior in every way stacked up against the 335i. Does not matter how you look at it. Handling, M3. Reliability, I would say, is pretty down the line on both, depending what type of owner you are. So I'll say no comment. Exterior styling, the M3. Overall driving pleasure, it's going to be the M3. But you have to keep in mind, this vehicle is way more expensive than the 335i. Like I said before, you can modify the 335i to put out similar, if not way more horsepower than the M3 for way cheaper. On top of that, you can make the car look basically identical from the exterior point of view. They look very, very similar. So if you're someone who has $6,000 to $10,000, the 335i is actually where you want to go, because it's so much more affordable and you can make it an absolute powerhouse. So if you're comparing which of these cars is better car for car, it's going to be the M3. But when you start factoring in you're spending your own money, the 335i is better in that sense because it's so much more appealing for the price point. So what I would do is isolate what do you want in a car, and from there I would decide which of those 335 engines is more tempting, then compare that to the M3. But I would love to hear what y'all have to say. What do y'all think? Do you think the 335i is actually superior to the M3? Let me know down below. I would love to hear your comments. I want to hear every one of your experiences. Have you owned a 335? Have you thought about it? Have you owned an M3? What was the good, the bad, the ugly, the in-between? Please leave your experience down below. Let me know what you think, and I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace out.